Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the Jonas Club Management Banquet and Catering Booking webinar. My name is Sarah and I'll be hosting this webinar today. Just have a couple of things to go over before we get started. Obviously, you probably have noticed that your phones are muted. This is just to minimize background noise throughout the presentation, so if you do have any questions for me, please go ahead and use the chat box or the Q&A. I will try to answer all questions when I see them come through, but if I feel that they aren't relevant to what we're talking about or if will be answered in a future slide, I will save it till the end. All questions will be answered, so please don't feel like I am ignoring your question. I will definitely get an answer for you one way or another. It just might not be during the presentation. A copy of this session will be available, so we're going to record our session today, so it's available to you in the video library on jonassupport.com, and the slides will also be posted again on jonassupport.com. Both of these things you can find under the Resources and Training tab. So what to expect? These webinars are just to enhance your knowledge of Jonas, so we do expect that you have a base knowledge of the banquet and catering system before you take this webinar. Not to be taken in place of training, and it is supposed to be just a general overview, so you might notice some things that are different if your club has any special workarounds or processes that aren't standard to the system. It'll be approximately 50 minutes of information with about 10 minutes for any questions and answers. I do not mind running long if we do have more questions that we need to get answered. This is a long presentation and there's a lot of material, so we will get all questions answered before we get off the phone today. So let's get started. The banquet and catering module basically is a way for you to track banquets on one central calendar for your club. You can bill your rooms charges, your services, and your resources to one member, non-members, or multiple members. And it also integrates with your hotel system, your club management, your inventory, and or your tea time system. So everything kind of works together in the same common database. So we'll start with some of your setups. So the first thing you need when you're setting up your banquets and catering module is a system profile. So you'll want to decide on the tax rules you wish to use. So the tax rules being, do you charge gratuities, service charges? Do you want it to pull from your point of sale? Do you have different service charges or gratuities or house charges that you need to charge? So you'll have to decide on these before you come into the system profile because this is where you're going to go ahead and determine them. Then you'll choose your default sales area, and again, you can have the sales area overridden by event if you need it to be, but you will choose the default here just for the one kind of central. So you probably have one called events or banquets. Then you'll use the area and item group. So this is what to use when it's sent over to club management. So what minimum rules, what description on the statement, and if there's any special revenue GLs or adjustments that need to be made, what will you use that? So you'll pick your item group there. You'll select your inventory area to pull from. So if you do have an inventory for your beverage that you sell in your banquets, this is where you will note which one it is. You can set actually a default account. So for non-member events, you can set up one member number, and it's just going to be called banquets or non-member event account. And then that account will always be used for non-members. So you have everything that was a guest event centralized into one member account on one account inquiry. So you do not need to create a member profile for every non-member that comes and has an event at your club. And you can also add a description at the bottom of every invoice. So this is what the profile screen looks like. You have, you'll choose your club, and then you'll choose that it's linked to a club. And then you have the option for your tax rules. So I typically recommend just checking off to use only the POS tax rules. You already have those set up. They're in your point of sale. Unless there's anything crazy that you're going to do differently in this module, keep it standard. And then you'll choose your POS sales area, so what partition and what sales area you're going to use for this system. You'll choose your inventory area, what the member account is that you've set up for non-member events. And then for club updates, I've set up an item group specifically for banquet and catering bookings. At the bottom of every invoice, I've just put a little thank you note here. And then I do have some options along the side, which we'll start to go over now. So page 2 of the system profile. There are tons of little flags there, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. But these are just the ones to take note of. Automatically adding setup and teardown time. So when you book an event in a room, do you want to automatically book off an hour, half an hour, 15 minutes for setup and teardown. So you can't have two events back to back that start at the same time and end at the same time. And then it'll ask you what tax code you want to use for descriptions. So you can have multiple tax codes set up in the point of sale, all of them saying different things. So maybe one says house charge, one says service charge, one says state tax, one says sales tax. This will ask you to pick one of them, and that's going to be the one that houses your descriptions. So that way it's standard. You don't see 5 different lines all for the same thing because they're all spelled a little bit differently. It'll use one wording and group all of your taxes and your service charges together. You can choose to print prices on your CEO or your event order, or you can choose to have no prices print. There's also options to have one of each print, so one with and one without, and also options to say prompt me every time and ask me when I'm printing my event order. You can use multiple partitions within the event management system. So what you can do is have a banquet booking that is pulling some of the food items from your food and beverage partition, and maybe is pulling some of the room charges or resources from your golf partition. You can post banquet charges to a hotel room. And there are also some other options here, which I'll show you that screen now. So this is page 2. Up at the top is where you would automatically add your setup and your teardown time. Then you have some other options here, like using legal paper for your event order, printing prices on the event order. This is where you'd note your tax code for those descriptions. Member minimums. If you want it to follow the item group rule, you can do that. Or if you want just everything to apply to minimums all the time, you can note that as well in this option. You can set up package revenue in the point of sale and use that here. If you're tracking covers, you can choose which, so you do get 3 columns when you're booking a banquet to put in the guests. You have agreed, expected, and confirmed. Which column are you counting for your covers? You can set up group types. So this is just for reporting and it's mandatory, so that way you can have more detailed reports. You could set up deactivated, so if you deactivate any of your sales items, are they still eligible to be sold here? You probably want to check that one off. And then over on the side, again, you have more options for your event order, some options for the way your calendar is viewed, if you can post to a hotel system, if you can use multiple partitions, and if you need anything to be limited for member credit limits. So the next option you have on your main system profile is Club GL. So this is where you'll note all the different general ledger accounts to hit when you're billing events. So that includes your deposit account, your payment account, all of your taxes and service charges, your bank, your gratuities, and your pre-settlement holding account. So all of these things need to be set up before you come in here. The next option on the system profile are standard phrases. The standard phrases on the event order will be printed on, if you're using the Jonas standard design, they will be printed there. You can put in any special notes about your food and beverage, your setup, or any guarantees that the club has. Then you have your mandatory fields. So is it mandatory for you to note the booking status when you're making a booking? And I would recommend that you do check this off so you know whether an event is confirmed or just tentative at this moment. And then you can also create new members right from banquet bookings. So if you have somebody coming in to become a member, you can actually create them a profile right from their event booking. Once you have your GLs in there, you can go into the deposits/splits options, which is still in the system profile. And this is where you'll choose the sales area and the item group for when deposits are member charges. So if somebody is saying, I want to make a deposit, charge $2,500 to my account, this is how it's going to show on the statement. So you want to make sure that you have the proper item group, and the item group is tied to the proper GL. You also have the option for deposits to create a journal entry. And if you're splitting an event, so if a member is splitting the cost of a certain event with a couple other members, what item group are being charged, what item group is being billed on that member's account. So maybe you want to make that one a little bit more descriptive. So once you have your system profile set up, what you'll do is go into select forms and form options. And this is where you have some options for your invoice as well as your event order design. So There are Jonas standard user configurable invoices and event orders in there, and these ones are more generic and they can kind of be customized to your club, but then there also are a couple other more custom designs. If you're choosing to use another club's custom design, just keep in mind you do need a password to get into it, so you will have to call Jonas to discuss that. You'll see there are a couple of options here about what to print on the event order, what to print on the invoice, and there are more options with invoice config as well as CEO config. So invoice config, again, just some generic options about how you want it to look. So if you want to suppress any zero amount items or zero quantity items, if you want to suppress any comments, if you want to show 2 columns for taxes, if you want to override what you've done in the profile with a different tax code for your descriptions, you can do that, as well as printing discounts on the CEO. Same thing for your CEO if you want to use legal paper, if you want to print prices on it, if you want to suppress anything from it, this is where you would do it. So it's under Banquet and Catering, Files, Select Forms and Form Options, and then CEO Config. The next thing that you need are revenue codes. So you need a revenue code for everything that you're going to bill in an event. So it's Banquet and Catering, Files, and then revenue codes. You need at least one for beverage, food, resources, and room charges. You have to give it a code, a description, and then you do have to note a general ledger account if you are using point of sale items. So for food, for example, if you're using your point of sale items, it will take the revenue account from the sales category. But for room revenue as well as resources, you definitely need a revenue account here so that you can post those things. Choose your sales area, and then you can also, if you are using a hotel system, pick the billing code that this revenue code would be linked to. So the next thing that you can set up is a booking checklist, and this is not mandatory to set up events. So it's under Banquet and Catering, Files, and then Book Checklist. These are just user-defined tasks or reminders or to-dos of things to attach to different bookings. So in my example here, I've made one just for weddings. So I have a couple of things that I definitely need to know about every wedding that my club is hosting. I don't need to know this about all my events though, so that's why it's just a checklist that I can choose to attach to wedding items. You have the description here, and then the type. You can choose between alphanumeric, number, date, or checkbox, which is what the Y is. And each of those have different entry fields. So the date will actually you can choose from the calendar. Alphanumeric is just a free type. Number has the 2 decimal places as if it's a financial amount. And the Y is just the checkbox, which your members can go in and either check off or leave unchecked. The next thing that you need and the next thing that's on your setup menu in Banquet and Catering are your function types. These are just the different kinds of events that you will be booking. All you need here is a code and a description. So here are some events that I could think of that my club might be hosting. Just needs to have a code and a description, and this is purely for reporting. You also need status codes. So this is under Banquet and Catering, Files, and then Booking/Room status codes. You need at least 2, a canceled and a confirmed, but most clubs will go further and do at least a tentative and a completed. You could also do some that are ready to be billed or some that are pending deposit. So you do have some options here in terms of statuses, whether or not it's confirmed or canceled, and you'll check that off for the 2 that you must have. If you want to hide these events, so the events that are the status, do you want to hide them from your calendar? Rooms inherit booking status. That's typically going to be always. So what that means is if the event is confirmed, then that room is confirmed booking as well. You could have a confirmed event with maybe a couple extra tentative rooms depending on the final guest count. You can restrict the events of this type from the lookup at all. So not only can you hide it from your calendar, you can actually restrict it from being able to find it at all. And then events in the status, will they transfer to history if you ask them to, if they're still open? Typically you want that to be a yes to enable you to be able to clean up your system a little bit quicker. The next thing that you need are seating styles, and this is more internal so that your staff know the day of the event by looking at your function sheet This is how we need to set up the room so the event is ready. So this file just has a code and a description, and you can actually put in different setup notes, and the setup notes will print on the event order if you want them to, if you select the copy notes to bookings. So these are some examples of seating styles that we have. You'll just have to create them for your club, and then they can be linked to different rooms. So rooms is the next thing we're setting up. You don't want to come in here without having seating styles set up because then you'll have to come back. So banquet and catering, files, and then rooms. These are all the different rooms or physical locations in the club that can be booked for events, as well as the half day, the full day, and the hourly rate to book these rooms. Here's also where you would note the seating styles, so which ones are eligible for each room. And also where you'd attach the revenue code. So when you bill a room, what GL does it go to? That's all housed in this revenue code right here. You can use a tax code, you can use a default status, and you can actually assign the square footage and rooms that it might be attached to. And then you can actually set up a layout for these rooms. So for each seating style that you've noted as eligible for this room, I can set up a different layout. So for buffet style, I've set up how my room should look with buffet style. So that way they can actually print out the physical layout. It makes it a little bit easier for your staff to set up the room for the event. You can also set up multi-rooms. So in the banquet and catering module under files, rooms, and then if you click on multi-rooms, you can have a facility that's maybe in this example, it's the club lounge and patio that can be rented. But then you can also have events where just the club lounge will be rented or just the patio will be rented. By noting them as multi-rooms, when the patio is booked, I can book the club lounge, but I cannot book the club lounge and patio. When the club lounge and patio is booked, I cannot book either of these. So if one half of the room is booked, I can book the other half, but I can't book both. When both are booked, so when they're up here, I can't book either of these. So it kind of keeps them separate, but also allows you to book rooms together. You could also set up a room for your golf course. So if you're using the tee time management system, you'll set up a room for your golf course, then click on the tee time management option, and just flag it as linked to the management system and what course it's linked to. So this way, if you do have a golf event where they're coming in from 3 to midnight and from 3 to 6 it's actually golfing, that can be reflected on your tee sheet because you're linking it here. And then you'll go into your group types. So group types are really just types of events that you'd maybe want to group together in reports. So maybe you want a report of all the events you had that were hosted by members versus non-members. You'd want to set up those as groups and then attach them to each event so that you can run reports later on what type of event it was, whether it was a member or a non-member. And then you still get to keep that detail of whether it was a private party, a wedding, a meeting, etc. in your event type. So group type and event type, two different ways to classify events. The next thing we're ready to set up is services. So in banquet and catering, files, and then services, you'll set up the different types of services offered. These can be things like breakfast, lunch, dinner, whether it's buffet or plated, hors d'oeuvres, bar service, open bar, cash bar, consumption bar, etc. When you set up a service, you just need a code and a description. The CEO section, make note of this because this is how things get grouped on your event order for most standard event order templates. This is free typed, but if I put food here in all caps and then food in another one in all caps and I keep them exactly the same, those two service types will be grouped together on my event order. So this is how you can put things together but maybe separate them out when you're billing, but it's also how you can separate things. So you want to make sure the CEO section, if you are using that feature, is the same for the things that you want billed together. What you can also set up is budget categories, and budget categories it's just another way of tracking. So for each event, you'll set up a budget category, and then you'll attach the budget category to each service, each room, each resource. When you're entering in the event, you can actually key in the expenses on the event, so how much it actually costs for food, for labor, for beverage. And you can run reports based on the profit and loss of those events. The next thing you need is resources. So resources are rentals. It's things like AV equipment, linens, dance floors, stages, beverage carts, all kinds of things that the club has that they would either rent out or book for events. So you need to set up each one as its own resource code with a description. You also have the option to track inventory. So if you only have 3 of a certain resource, you would note that you only have 3, and then as you start booking them up for your events, if you try to book more than 3 at the same time, it will actually stop you and tell you it's already booked. Resources you can suppress from printing on the event order, suppress from printing on the invoice. You can put in special notes for each resource, and then you can also charge for them, or you can leave it at 0 if you don't charge for any of those rentals. You can also note that some resources are only eligible in certain rooms, so you would click on rooms and just note which rooms this resource code is eligible for. This is another optional setup, so banquets and catering, files, menu packages. What you can do is if you sell your banquet or catering packages in packages, so you have, appetizers, entrees, and desserts that all kind of come together, you could set up those packages, note all the sales items that make up those packages, and then instead of having to choose them individually each time for an event, you just have to choose your package code. The last setup I have is common phrases. So common phrases are things at the club that you find yourself typing a lot. So it's cancellation policies, it's dress codes, it's guarantees, it's food policies, beverage policies, etc. What you can do is assign it to a code and type it out once. And then when you're putting in events and putting in your notes, you do not have to retype this. You just choose the code 1, and then your cancellation policy will pop itself in there. So common phrases are just a way to speed up the process, minimize the amount of keystrokes you need when you're setting up an event, and ensure that all of the policies are standard. They're worded the same every single time because they're preset in the system. So let's get into actually processing some bookings. So this is what your booking screen looks like. You'll see you have your facilities off to the left-hand side, your available times, and then you do have some options here to find bookings, do an inquiry on the T-sheet, look at your T-sheet calendar. You can also look at your resources and your financials for the month from here. So when you're processing a booking, you can click and drag the time and the room that you wish, or you can just hit find and then create a booking. The first screen you'll be taken to is right here. It's this one. You have to give your booking a title and then choose the status. Choose whether you're billing it to a member or a guest, and if it's a member, all of this information will pop in. Choose when the deposit is due and the amount, and this is just for your reference so you can keep track. And then you have some options along the right-hand side as well as along the bottom. So the first thing along the right-hand side that you should be going to is more details. So more details is where you're setting the function type, where you're setting the seating style, where you're setting the agreed number of guests, and also where you're setting any defaults for service. So this is where you could say, instead of having to choose for every single service that you enter in that it's a buffet dinner, you would say dinner buffet is the default, and then that way you don't have to choose it every time. It's always going to be pre-populated in there. You choose the group, so if this is a member event versus a non-member event, this is where you would track that. So again, we have our function types, and then we have our group type. And there are 2 different ways to classify events. Group type should be a little bit more high level than the function type. If this event is exempt from any service charges or taxes, you would note it here, as well as noting whether or not it's UBI, which is unrelated business income. Over here, it gives you the start date and end date for the event, as well as who booked it and who it's assigned to, so what staff member is working on this event. How to post on the board, so how this event should be noted. Any cancellation note, if there are any cancellation notes, and you can see, if you remember, this is my standard phrase from the last slide. And if this booking is locked, so can anyone else make changes besides me to this booking? I've checked it off that no, I am the only person who should be making changes to this booking. So then we can get into some actual booking of the event. So from that main details screen, you'll click on Rooms. This is where you'll assign the rooms that the party will take place in. So you'll choose your date and your start and your end time. So if it's a multi-day event, you do need a room for each day, as well as what time you're starting, what time you're finishing. You'll choose what room. So I have room 2 as well as the golf course. You'll choose the function type. So in this case, it's just a private party. And then in this case also the setup is buffet style. So this is how I want my room set up. It's buffet style. The amount is pre-populated, but you can change that if you need to. And then the agreed number of guests pulls from that service defaults tab in the more details option that we just looked at. Agreed, expected, and confirmed, all different ways to keep track of guests. Does not matter which column that you use, you just want to make sure that you're keeping it consistent. From here, you can actually get in and start adding services, adding resources and notes to these facilities. You can get to your services, resources, and notes from here as well. And it gives you a running total, so any service charges and taxes you might be getting charged on the rooms. This is also where you would make the tee time booking. So since my event here has the golf course noted as a room, I can click on the tee time box, which is right here under the TT tab. It will take me to my tee sheet where I can click and drag the times that I need to block off and then book it for a group. So now nobody can make tee times during my event because I have booked the golf course and it's linked to my event, so any tee times will be billed back to my event. From rooms, you can head on into services. So you can either choose the room up at the top, or if you've already chosen it from the room screen, it will be pre-populated. You can choose what time the service starts and what time service should end, as well as how many people you're serving and what kind of service it is. So in this case, it's DB, which in my club is a dinner buffet. You can link your items individually, or in this case, if you recognize these items, this is my menu, and I linked my menu from here. So all you need to do is click in the item box, hit your F2 key, which is the lookup, and then if you do wish to add a menu, there's an option up at the top that says add a menu, which you'll double click on. If you wish to add individual sales items, you can add individual sales items off of the list. Down at the bottom, it gives you running totals for how much for this service, as well as any service charges and taxes, and then the total here. And if you need to omit any of those, you can. You can also add a freestyle discount here if you are giving them a discount on services. You can move services between rooms, and you can also import services from other rooms. So if you have a multi-room event or an event that's happening a couple of times a week, you can import services from other events so that it's all standard. Lastly, we have resources. So this is where I would attach any rentals that this event is going to need. So again, you start by choosing the room, the date, and the start and end time you're going to need this resource, and then link the resources that you are needing. So I need a microphone and a speaker. I'm booking 2 microphones and 3 speakers, and right now I have 3 of each left in my inventory. Again, down at the bottom, you see your totals and how much you're spending on resources, and you can put in notes from here as well, which will pull in those common phrases we set up back in the previous slides. So once you have your room, your services, and your resources into your event, you can start getting into some billing. So from the booking details screen, click on billing, and it will give you a full description of everything that you're charging. So the rooms, the services, the resources, and if this event is linked to any hotel rooms. It gives you the items, the service charges, and the taxes, as well as a subtotal for the event. And this is where you can print your invoice. So printing your invoice will look something like this. This is just a very generic Jonas standard invoice. Gives me all of my different titles down at the bottom. And you can see, if you recall, when we set up our service types, I had a CEO description of food in all caps. I did not do that for all of my different service types. So food is the only one that's customized here. But if I wanted to, I could split this out into being hors d'oeuvres versus served food, as well as open bar versus table wine. So anything I put in CEO will print here exactly as I type it. It gives me my recap and total. Any deposits that were received will be subtracted, and then a balance due, and then there is my message, which I set up in my system profile. From the booking details screen, you can also copy an event. So if somebody comes to you and says, I had a Christmas party at the club last year, I want to do the exact same thing this year, all you have to do is pull up that booking, click on copy, give it a new start date, and then choose exactly what you want to copy. By default, everything will be checked off. You can also make events recurring. So instead of copying the event, if somebody comes to you and says, this is great, I want to have this party every month, what you'd have to do is just click on the recurring button, give the pattern, so whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly, and then how many days, if it's just on weekdays, just on weekends, if it's every 1 week, every 2 weeks, if it's every third week of the month, or if it's every year at this time. You give it a range, so a starting date and an ending date, or you can end it after a certain number of occurrences. Then you can choose exactly what you want to copy, so what's recurring from this event. These are some other options you have from the booking details screen, and I don't go into them in too much detail, but you can print the event order. You can attach those checklists that we set up. So we did set up one for weddings. This is where you would attach it to the individual event. You can print form letters, which are just free form letters that are designed in your administration module, as well as mail merge documents. You can view any archived documents that are associated with this event. So that includes archived POS chits as well as any audits. So if any payments have been made, the audit will show up here. And then you can also create an appointment for this event. So you can actually export a calendar file that will place it on your Outlook or your Gmail calendar. You also have the option, and this is just a flag in your user profile, to go in and watch and look at your banquets in the operations screen, as opposed to looking in the booking details screen. So if you recall, we had the booking details screen up first. This is the same event, but I've selected to have my user ID always look at the operations screen. So I can see my rooms, my services, my resources, my notes, and I can actually add things right from this screen. So it's completely user preference. It's however you wish to view first. So you can either look at the generic booking details way, or there's the operations screen, which kind of gives you a more financial, detailed view of the event right away. So once you get your banquet in the system, you've chosen your rooms, your services, your resources, you've attached any notes, you've put in your checklist, we can get in and start processing payments, deposits, and billing events. So you can process payments by going to Banquet and Catering, Processing, and then Settlement/Billings. It will take you to this screen you're looking at right here. First, you'll choose your club, then your booking, and then you'll have to choose a date of record. So the date of record is the day that this is going to hit the GLs, the day that this will be recorded on the member's account, the day that it's going to be recorded for the banquet. Gives you a summary of the whole event, so you have your rooms, your services, your resources, your service charges, your taxes, as well as a subtotal. And then if you were to bill this event right now, the grand total would be member charged to the member account that it's associated with, which in this case is my account. From here, what you can do is click on deposits or payments to make deposits or payments, and it does not matter which one you use. Some clubs have different GLs for deposits versus payments. If you are one of those clubs, you definitely have to choose the correct one. Most clubs just use one GL, so deposit versus payment, not a big deal. So we'll start with a deposit. The screen looks the same for both. You just have to choose the type, so whether it's check, cash, credit card, member charge. If it's a check, you can put in the check number, so that's just for your records. And then you can go ahead and override any of the defaults. So right now the default is to go to this GL, which we set up in the system profile. And then the description for the GL will be deposit for booking number for member, which is G123, which is my member number. You'll type in the amount, and then you'll hit add. Once you hit OK, it will pop up asking if you want to run the preview or the update. Preview it first and then run the update. You'll get an audit trail. And then once that's posted, you'll see it right here in the main settlement billing screen that here's all my resources, my rooms, my services, my taxes, my service charges, my subtotal, and then there's my deposit for $2,500. Now if I was to bill this, that amount would be charged to the member's account. What you can also do from the settlement/billing screen is split by member charge. So what that means is even though one person has taken responsibility as the party planner, it can be billed to 2, 3, 4, however many member accounts you want, so they could all split it evenly. So if you click on split by member charge, what you'll do is you'll note all of the members that are splitting this event, except for the person who's noted as the bill to member. So I am the bill to member down here. I don't need to put myself up here because whatever balance remains after I put in the charge amounts to these two people will be charged to my account. You'll get an audit trail. So you'll click on preview and then post, and you'll get an audit trail detailing all of the GL postings that are being made, what's being charged, and who it's being billed to. So in this case, I've chosen to just bill myself for this event. This is the grand total, less any deposits and payments. And these are my revenues, my taxes, my gratuity posting. It also makes the entry to take the deposits and payments out of their holding account and post them to revenue. You can also see how much was applied to the minimum in this case. So I got $25,000 applied to the minimum because I chose to use all of the event on minimums at my club, but what you can do is limit it to just be food, just be beverage, or have nothing from banquet and catering apply to minimums as well. It will just be noted for you on this audit trail. So once it's posted, you'll see it on the member's account. So this is my account inquiry. There's the charge for my party, there's the deposit, and there's the payment. So it charges the full amount, and it actually notes those two different deposits and payments on my account. And it's all reflected in my final balance, which I can then print a statement for myself or for this member and send them a statement with their charge. When you print a statement and a person has a banquet and catering charge, if you have the flag turned on for billing backup, it will automatically print out the event order and the invoice to send to the member with the statement. So similar to when it prints out the CHIT backup, it will also print out your event forms. Instead of billing each event one by one, which is the process that we just went over, you can bill events all in one big group. So if it's the end of the week and you're ready to bill all of your events, you'll go into banquet and catering, processing, batch settlement update, choose your club, and then choose the date range that you want to bill. So every event that happened between May 1st and May 15th will get billed. So I'll hit preview and then post, and that will bill all of these events for this total in one go. So it definitely makes your life a little bit easier, a little bit faster, especially if you have a big event business at your club. The only thing is you lose that detail because everything gets grouped in together. You can also print event orders en masse. So not only can you bill events, you can print the event order. So for the upcoming week, you can print off all the event orders to give to your kitchen in one go. So it's under banquet and catering, reports, print event order. You'll choose your club, and then you'll choose the option for date range. Put in your date range. So at the beginning of May, I'm putting in for the 1st to the 15th. I want to print all of my event orders for that month so I can post them on my corkboard in the kitchen. So now let's get into some more reports. So there are tons of reports in the banquet and catering system. Please play around with them, see which one you like the best that works for your club. We've just chosen a couple that are more popular to go over in this webinar. So the two that we get asked about the most are the financial report and the events report. The financial report looks like this. It gives you the date, gives you who booked it, gives you the booking number, the description, and then the charges broken out: room, food, beverage, other resources, service charges, gratuities, discounts, taxes. a subtotal, if there's any deposits or adjustments, and then a grand total for the event. So this is a good way for you to find out how your club is doing financially, how it's a good way to forecast, because you will probably have services booked into events way before the event happens. And it's a good way to look back to see what you need to plan for the upcoming seasons. The events report is a little bit less detailed, gives you the start time and the end time. You choose your date range, and then the event name, the group type, the type of function that it is, so it's a member private party. You have the location and also the guaranteed guest count. You have the event number, the member that it's responsible or being billed to, and then you have how much. So this does give you financial information. It's just a little bit less detailed. It's more of a bookings report. The last one is the month at a glance. So this is a good way to print out a big piece of paper that will have all of your events, but it's also interactive. So when you run the month at a glance report, you can actually click on Spring Fling Barbecue, which is right here, and it will pop up the details for that event right from this screen. So it's a way for you to look at your events calendar, basically. And that is all of the information I have for you today. I will go ahead and open it up for questions. I did not see anything come through the chat box, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute the phones. Just keep in mind, if you don't have a question, please mute the phone on your side, just to minimize background noise. There are quite a few of you in this session.
Line unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Okay, so phone should be unmuted now if anybody has any questions for me at this time.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
So say we're doing an event for our membership. So we would want to create, you know, the CEO through this and everything, but how do we bill it individually to each member?
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of that question?
Yeah, okay, so my question is, when we're having a club event for a membership, say Memorial Day that's coming up, so we'd go through here, we'd book the room, we'd make the CEO, everything like that, and then for the billing, how do we bill per member a certain amount?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't all go to one member, it would go to all the members who attended.
Right, okay. So this webinar is more for private events, but we do have an event registration section here. I don't, just for the sake of time, I can't go over the whole thing, but to bill all of your events, do you use this section, first of all?
No, not yet.
No? Okay. So this is where you would do it. What I would recommend is maybe get some training on how to do the actual event registration.
Okay, and
this is
through club management, not through activity management?
This webinar was about the banquets and catering module. So if you're looking for activity management, event management.
No. I wanted to make sure that the event registration, I can find a webinar on that, because we don't have the Jonas activity management, we just have club management. So this is part of that club management event registration?
Yes, as long as you have the banquet and catering module. It's just an event registration. It's an extra module you can purchase.
For that webinar.
Okay.
That answered my question. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So I did see a question come through the Q&A. It was, we missed the first part of the training session. Could you please advise if you went over how to create a BEO? And if so, could you send us a breakdown of how to do that? This session is being recorded, so if you wait until probably tomorrow, end of day tomorrow, it will be posted on jonassupport.com. Where's my... Are there any more questions for me at this time?